Okay, officially welcome to day 9 of the 21-day guided journaling. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Uh, we have several of you here today: Sarah, Phil, Maya, Kristen, Kay, Hope, Dan, Caroline, and myself. Okay, there's a lot going on. One of the things that I love about the most coming on live every day is that you can't really hide. It's not one of those things where you can play it off one time. You actually have to show a lot of the true colors and everything that's happening behind the scenes. And I love it that it's like that, and that it's not perfect, and that it's unexpected. And just like today, I was just moving my computer around, so everything that I had here set up for the last 8 days was disconnected, and all of a sudden I couldn't record. Something was glitching, and but look at us solving problems on the fly. That's the beauty of this. Day 9. Okay, we are into the second week. We're in experimentation, as I addressed yesterday. And I have been trying to speak slowly, but maybe I have to speak even slower. Let me know. If I have to speak slower, just give me a thumbs up. If not, I will just motor forward. And hopefully you'll be able to catch up with the prompts that I'm leaving in the group, and other conversations that we're having in the private direct messaging side of things. Okay, day 9. What is happening on day 9? Yesterday we started diving into needs, and needs being that which catalyzes movement. Any need has to be met, and that meeting of the need comes with some motion. And yesterday we started doing some recording, not only around our emotional state, but we started to address our body. And we are using, in this case, the BOLT score, which is from the Oxygen Advantage. There are many other ways of testing this, but this is a very simple one. And we also started addressing our sleep. And something that I wanted to add without being overwhelming is scoring our sleep 0 to 5, 0 being terrible, I didn't sleep at all, and 5 being glorious. So we're going to start adding a number to our sleep record. And if you can go back to day 8 and try to remember, or using the answer that you gave on your sleep and try to score it, that would be very helpful for when we get into day 14, because we are going to be summarizing again the same way we did for our emotional state according to our position in the Valence-Arousal Model. So needs create movement. And in terms of motion, what motion brings is it brings awareness. And as you have been moving on your journaling practice, and especially in the description of your emotional state that you start to journal about after you position yourself in the VA model, you may have noticed that there is a little bit more granularity to how you have been describing things. What does this mean? You're probably getting a little bit more detailed. You're starting to peel back the layers. If you're not peeling back the layers, nothing to worry about. That is totally okay if you are one-dimensional in your emotional description at the moment. But if you are peeling back the layers, what you are discovering is that there are 2 types of emotions. There are the primary emotions, and then there are the secondary emotions. The primary emotions are the ones that are at the core. These are the ones that I was talking about that last 90 seconds. The secondary emotions are the ones that are tied to the stories, to the ego, to the reflexive patterns that we've developed over time. And one of the things that I want us to start to notice is that these primary emotions are the ones that we want to work with. These are the ones that are instinctual. They are the ones that we would consider natural. And when I say natural, I mean at the most fundamental level of our nature. And the primary emotions are also the ones that we feel with greater intensity. And even if we don't know how to name them, we sense them. These primary emotions, when we start to pay attention to them, are also that which allows us to connect with ourselves and the experience that we're having. And in addition to that connection, those primary emotions are guiding. They guide us. They tell us what to do, whether we are doing it deliberately or reflexively. And this is where we have to start to notice that these secondary emotions are the ones that follow the primary one, that follow the original one. And these are emotions that we have either learned, they are something we have designed, whether through nurture or just by practicing to protect ourselves. They are defense mechanisms, and they can also be a way of avoiding the primary emotion that is so instinctual and so confusing in many ways. In addition, these secondary emotions, which I'm going to give an example here in a second of what they are, they can be kind of numbing. They make us feel flat, and I think flat is something that one of you, I think Dan, I think, yep, you use the word flat. Yeah, flat. This sensation of being flat is comes from a place of living in a secondary emotion. And our goal is to move past those secondary emotions so we can get to the primary one, as those are the ones that guide us, they connect us, they're the ones that allow us to truly feel, and are the ones that are part of our instincts. The other downside of the secondary emotions, although they can serve us in some way, is that they tend to be confusing. And when we feel confused, we become disconnected. And one of our goals is to feel connected first with ourselves and thus be able to connect with our experiences and the world. Now, the primary emotion is, let's say you're taking a test, and you take the test, you get the score back, and you realize that the score is way lower than you expected. And in that moment, you have this sense of disappointment. That would be your primary emotion. You're disappointed. But immediately, our nature is to start to protect ourselves because we want to survive. You start to enter a secondary emotion. And maybe that secondary emotion is anger. You get angry that you didn't score what you thought or you should be scoring in that test. And with that anger, you act out, you move into a physical state, a physical expression that says, F this, F that, this test sucks, you suck, I suck. You start to complain. And then following that anger and that expression, you realize that the behavior that you exhibited, that you presented, is one that you are not proud of. You don't fully align with that expression. It's not really how you wanted to act, you just did. And all of a sudden you enter into a state of shame, embarrassment. That's also a secondary emotion. So our goal is to be able to become more reflexive in how we notice our initial disappointment so that we can work with that emotion and have it move through the system. So it can guide us. It can help us get connected. And this is where the emotional variability that I was talking about a few days ago comes into play. What we're looking for is emotional variability at a primary level. At a secondary level, that's when it starts to get slightly out of control. Moreover, what happens at that level is it stops serving us. Brene Brown talks about this very well, and she says that the gateway to working with our emotions starts with vulnerability. It's being willing to observe, share, open up that which is truly at the core, and that comes from a place of instinct, physiology, human nature. And when we can do that, we can process all those secondary emotions, and thus, if you're talking about spirituality, dissolve your ego. If you're talking about psychological health, enter into a state of harmony, coherence, well-being. Now, how does a cycle of an emotion build up? Well, we go through these cycles of being in a resting state, and then we move into a state where we are alert. An event occurs, and then we enter into a state where we're either fighting, we're running away, there's flight, or we freeze. And then after that, when that passes, that physical expression passes, we enter into a state of processing. And when we enter into the state of processing, there's a fork in the road. And the emotion can go in two directions. One, it can be stored in the body, or two, it can be used. It can be used by the body to guide us where we need to go. And where do we need to go? Where we need to go to a place where when we get that need met, we enter a state of wholeness, health, fulfillment, where there's a sense of satisfaction, empowerment. And this is where it's important to notice how our behavior and our awareness around how an emotion is comes up and then is processed to make that emotion functional. We want functional emotions. This is something that I addressed a little bit yesterday, which is this sense that we are born, we grow, we reproduce, and then we die. Our goal is to allow for an emotion to be born, to come up, to be amplified, experience it, but then we want it to die. We want it to disappear so we can move on to the next. And so we can go through this iterative cycle of emotional health, which creates the emotional variability and allows us to live in coherence, in harmony with not only the people around us, not only the environment, but ourselves, our egos, our stories, our desires. This may feel a little overwhelming at this moment, but it's going to come down to the following. After the fight or flight or freeze, which is your reflexive expression, comes the processing. And what we want to learn how to do is to assist that processing. And the way that we assist that processing is through motion. And I'm going to give you a little example. I used to coach a group of teenagers, and I grew very close to these kids. And one of them lost his father. His father had a heart attack and passed away. And he was 16 years old. And he was devastated. And I remember spending nights with him on the phone and just talking. And then we would meet at the gym and we would train. And he was kind of making it through, but there was something that was just sitting there. It just felt heavy and dark. And it was simply not moving. And he had a school trip where they were going to go visit Israel planned, and he thought, you know what, I'm not going to go on this trip. I don't feel like it. I don't want to be around anybody. I just don't feel like myself. I don't feel good. And 24 hours before the trip, he decided, screw it. I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid and see what happens. So he went on this trip. And he was gone on this trip. And when he came back, he looked completely different. He was light as a feather. And he said, "Carl, I figured it out." And I said, "Okay, how so? What happened?" And he said, "One night I was with my roommate who I was rooming up with, and we decided that we were going to run away from the hotel and run out into the desert so we could see the stars." And they went out into the desert alone. These are 16-year-old kids doing their thing. And they just kept walking and walking and walking and walking to the point where they could see no lights. And when they were out there, for whatever reason, they were talking. And then that led to having this urge to scream and then to run around really fast. And eventually getting so tired that they both ended up crying um, in an uncontrollable way. And as he was crying in an uncontrollable way, he realized that there was a part of him that wanted to be embarrassed that he was crying. But then he looked over and he saw that his friend was crying too. So he thought, well, if we're both crying, who cares? And then that passed and they walked back to the hotel. And the next morning he woke up and everything was different. That thing that was sitting in him had moved. And he came back to the US where I saw him looking light as a feather. And the question he came with to me was, "Carl, why is it that that which we are the most scared to do, that which we think is the weakest thing to do, the most vulnerable thing to do, is that which truly heals us? And why are we embarrassed of that? Why are we ashamed of that?" And I couldn't answer then, and I couldn't answer now. And the best thing that I can say is that because that is what the body needs. That is what your physiology needs. That's what your mind needs. But for some reason, we have created these mental models, these mental constructs that say that that's not the way to go. So I'm trying to say two things here. One, allow yourself to express yourself freely. Even if you come off as somebody who is overreacting, being too emotional, however you want to label it. And when that has happened and you have become aware of that which you have moved, work on sharing that process with yourself. That could be in a journaling form. It could be recording it into a memo, a voice memo, or sharing it with a friend. And to realize that anybody who judges you on such behavior or is unwilling to listen to your process after such a moment or such an episode, those are probably not the people that you need at this moment to be healing. And it's okay to say, this is where the line is drawn. This is where the circle is drawn. You belong outside for now. I take full responsibility of maybe not being able to communicate this clearly and in a way that assists other people in understanding. But this is what I need right now. And in order for me to be vulnerable, to process this emotion, to allow this emotion to be functional and not something that gets stored and becomes heavy, this is how I need to operate at this moment. And to use that as your fuel, use that as your foundation. And then from there, start to grow that circle, start to grow that ability to be vulnerable in ways that are maybe not as accentuated or acute, maybe a little bit more calm, but still present, still available, still in flux. It's in change where we notice. This is where we become aware. And the more we can become aware, the more we can address. So, an anchoring question that I would like for you guys to have going for you today is, how will I move my emotions today? How will I move my emotions today? And I simply want you to have that present. And I want you to have it present during the 2 minutes of focusing on your breath, and maybe before and after you do your eating in an unplugged fashion. Now, for our journaling, as always, the day at the top, the date, time, and location. And then you're going to mark your position on the VA model, and you're going to describe those emotions. Today, you're going to become aware of emotions that are secondary and primary. And it may happen in a jumbled form. No need to be organized. Simply be descriptive. Then you're going to take your BOLT score. You're going to mark that number. And then you're going to score your sleep, 0 to 5, 5 being glorious, 0 being I didn't sleep at all. And you're going to ask yourself the same questions you asked yourself yesterday. How did I sleep? How long did I sleep for? How did I awaken? Did I dream? If so, what did I dream? It's always best to journal about your dreams than to tell somebody else. Nobody cares about your dreams but you. Somehow we think they're very special in the moment, but when you try to tell somebody else, they just think you're crazy. So this is helping you make friends and keep you connected to people. And then you're going to get into today's specific journaling prompts, which are going to be the question, am I healthy? And how so? Am I healthy and how so? I'm just going to leave it open-ended for now. The second question I want you to ask yourself is, do I feel safe/secure? Where do I feel safe and where do I not feel safe? Whatever comes up for you, describe that. The third prompt is, am I able to produce, create, generate resources? And I want you to think about resources in any way that comes up for you. Emotional resources, financial resources, supportive resources. Am I able to produce or generate, attract resources? Are those resources enough to make me feel secure, safe, self-sufficient? Are you enough on your own with that which you are attracting, with that which you are producing? Elaborate on it. And then the final question is, do I feel healthy, safe, and resourced in the place that I call home? And I want you to start with your physical home. Excellent. Okay. If we have any questions in the chat, let me know. I see Caroline says dorsal state, it can feel oddly comfortable sometimes when you're avoiding things. Yes. Such a powerful place to be is hiding behind the stories we tell ourselves and the secondary emotions. Phil and Sarah, let's see. Phil says, I have a question. Since Sarah and I are listening to these sessions in the evening, we decided to do our journaling in the morning afterwards. Would you recommend calling tomorrow day 9 and basically skip one day because we are not journaling today? Yes, just call it day 9 on the day that you are doing day 9 of your journaling. So if you're listening tonight and journaling tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow for you is day 9 in your journaling, and it will be day 10 in our description. Yeah, you don't have to do it right now. This is literally simply a preface to that which you're going to do, and it should serve as a guiding tool. Now, I do recommend journaling in the morning, but it is up to you as to how you would like to do that. And the reason I like to do it in the morning is because if we think about how we even process an emotion, it's also in line with the states that we go through. We're asleep, meaning we are completely at rest. We wake up, we become alert, and then it's time to act. We're either moving towards something, away from something, against something. And then we use that information, that feedback to process, and then that guides us into the next state. Something that we haven't talked about yet is the natural rhythms that we go through, which are circadian rhythms and ultradian rhythms. And we'll talk about that in a future session. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to see the waves and catch the waves. Great. Excellent. My friends, day 9 complete. Tomorrow, I'll see you for day 10 at the same time. I appreciate you all. And with that being said, happy journaling. Nos vemos. Ciao.